What if I told you a parrot cursed at Andrew Jackson's funeral, revealing a shocking truth about his legacy? It was the year 1845, and the air was thick with the smell of damp earth and the soft rustle of the trees surrounding the hermitage, Andrew Jackson's sprawling estate. The world stood still as the great general, the controversial president, lay lifeless. A crowd, drawn from all corners of the nation, gathered to pay their final respects. But as the mourners stood in solemn silence, a strange noise broke the reverent stillness. A sharp, discordant shriek echoed from within the house. It was no human cry, but the shrill scream of a bird. A parrot that, in its final moments, would become the unwitting symbol of Jackson's unrelenting and fiery spirit. The sound reverberated through the mourners, sending shivers down their spines, like a ghostly omen hanging in the air. The bird, an African gray parrot named Pole, had lived a long and strange life under the care of Andrew Jackson. Originally purchased as a gift for his beloved wife, Rachel, the bird had witnessed the highs and lows of Jackson's tempestuous life. But after Rachel's untimely death, the parrot became Jackson's sole companion, the one living being who could stand as a mirror to his raw, unfiltered temperament. The bird, in a curious twist of fate, had learned much from its master, lessons in sharp, biting language, and an arsenal of curse words that could shake even the toughest of men. It was a reflection of Jackson's own fiery persona, now carried on in the most unlikely of forms. The funeral ceremony was a grand affair, with mourners dressed in black, their faces somber as they paid tribute to the former president. The heavy scent of incense and the low murmurs of prayer filled the room. Reverend William Menifee Norman stood before the coffin, delivering a eulogy that echoed through the hearts of those gathered. Yet, in the midst of his solemn words, the bird's voice pierced the air again. It began with a faint mutter, like the whisper of a distant storm, but it quickly grew louder. The curse words, once a private echo of Jackson's own outbursts, now burst forth from Pole with a ferocity that could only be described as madness. The mourners were taken aback, their faces twisting in confusion and discomfort as the parrot's curse words filled the air. The once peaceful atmosphere of Jackson's funeral was now shattered, disrupted by the shrill, unrelenting tirade from Pole. It was as if the bird had inherited Jackson's wrath, a last act of defiance from beyond the grave. The language, sharp and profane, echoed through the room, tainting the dignity of the event. There was no mistaking it. The bird was not only speaking, it was enraged, as though it too was grieving in its own twisted way. The mourners shifted uneasily, exchanging glances, some muttering prayers, others unsure whether they were witnessing a haunting or a bizarre spectacle. As the bird's curses grew louder, the once dignified funeral descended into chaos. Reverend Norman, his face flushed with embarrassment, attempted to continue his eulogy, but the bird's voice drowned him out, a relentless barrage of profanities that rattled even the bravest among the mourners. Some tried to silence Pole, but the bird, seemingly possessed by the very spirit of Andrew Jackson, refused to be tamed. It flapped wildly in its cage, screeching its uncouth words, as if mocking the very concept of decorum. The reverence of the funeral had been turned into a grotesque mockery, and it was only when the bird was forcibly removed from the house that the ceremony could resume. But the memory of that moment would linger, a bizarre testament to the legacy of Jackson and the unexpected rebellion of his pet. Pole's disruptive performance at Jackson's funeral was only the latest chapter in a life full of oddities and strange occurrences. For years, the bird had been a silent witness to Jackson's most turbulent moments. It was said that Pole had a particular fondness for Jackson's angry outbursts, often mimicking the president's fiery speeches in the same gruff tone. The parrot's vocabulary, filled with harsh curses and venomous language, became infamous, as it would occasionally surprise visitors with its biting remarks. Some whispered that the bird's words were a curse upon Jackson himself, a reflection of the anger and turmoil that had defined his presidency. Yet, others saw Pole as a tragic reminder of the pain and loss that haunted Jackson's soul. The parrot, after all, had been his only companion in the years following Rachel's death, and perhaps it too had been shaped by the cruel and violent world it inhabited. As the years passed, the parrot's language became more erratic and unpredictable, almost as though it was fed by the very atmosphere of the hermitage. Those who visited Jackson's estate, or had the misfortune of encountering Pole, were often taken aback by the bird's sharp tongue. But there was something almost eerie in the way it would curse. It wasn't simply the foul language, it was the intensity with which the bird spoke. Each curse seemed to have a life of its own, as though they were uttered from some deep, buried well of pain, rage, and sorrow. Some visitors claimed to have heard Pole mutter Jackson's name, followed by a string of profanities. Others swore the bird would scream as if possessed, its voice rising and falling in unnerving patterns. It was as though Pole had become a vessel for Jackson's unresolved emotions, a living embodiment of his darker impulses. But Pole was not merely a reflection of Jackson's anger. He was also a symbol of the man's complexity. The bird had witnessed the birth of Jackson's populist revolution, his brutal battles, and his complex relationships with his fellow politicians. In the midst of it all, Pole had been there, perched on his master's shoulder or in the corner of a room, listening to Jackson's speeches, absorbing the rage and the triumphs. It was as though the bird could sense the seismic shifts in Jackson's life, the political victories, the losses, the betrayals, and the moments of solitude. The parrot's language had become a mirror for Jackson's own chaotic existence, a mirror that reflected both his power and his flaws. The more Pole cursed, the more it seemed to channel the raw, untamed forces of a man who had once stood at the helm of the nation and who had faced both triumph and disaster with an unrelenting spirit. In a strange twist of fate, Pole's most infamous moment came not in the heat of battle or the fervor of a political rally, but at the very end of Jackson's life. It was as though the bird, after years of absorbing Jackson's anger and frustration, had inherited his very essence. The death of the president left the bird without a master, and the funeral was its final performance, a bizarre, chaotic outburst that would live on in the memories of those who were there. The moment became legend, a tale that seemed to echo through the years, a reminder of the connection between Jackson and Pole, the strange and unlikely bond between a man and his pet. For those who had witnessed it, the bird's curse-filled tirade was not just an oddity. It was the final chapter in the long, turbulent life of Andrew Jackson, a man whose legacy was defined by both his strength and his flaws. And perhaps, in Pole's final scream, the world had heard the true spirit of Jackson himself. After the funeral, Pole was removed from the house, but its legacy lived on. Some would later recount the story with a mix of horror and fascination, describing the strange and unnerving spectacle of a bird that seemed to channel the very essence of a president's troubled soul. In the years that followed, the bird's outburst at Jackson's funeral became a tale told in hushed tones, passed down through generations. Pole became more than just a pet. It became a symbol of the chaos that had surrounded Jackson's presidency, a living manifestation of the tumultuous world he had left behind. Some believed that Pole's incessant cursing was a final act of rebellion, an echo of the fire and fury that had defined Jackson's life. Others whispered that it was a haunting, a reminder that some legacies could never truly be silenced, no matter how much time passed. Whatever the truth, Pole's curses would forever be remembered as a bizarre, tragic footnote in the life of Andrew Jackson. Years turned to decades, and the Hermitage estate slowly faded into the pages of history. Yet the tale of Pole the Parrot did not die with Andrew Jackson. The bird's final, unforgettable performance became a fixture in local folklore, and whispers of its cursing reverberated through the halls of the estate long after the mourners had left. Stories of the parrot's behavior spread, some claiming that Pole had been more than just a bird. It had been a prophet of sorts, channeling Jackson's wild temperament even after death. Locals began to speak of Pole in hushed tones, fearing the bird's presence was not entirely gone, that perhaps a part of Jackson's spirit had somehow merged with the creature. And as the years passed, the image of a parrot screaming profanities at a funeral became a haunting reminder of the president's unyielding power, both in life and beyond the grave. The legacy of Pole took on a strange, almost supernatural quality as time wore on. Some claim to have heard the echoes of the parrot's curses even after its death, particularly on stormy nights when the winds howled through the trees surrounding the hermitage. It was as if the very air had become charged with the restless energy of the bird, the embodiment of Jackson's own tumultuous life. For years, visitors to the estate would report hearing strange sounds, scratching, flapping, and distant screeches that seemed to come from nowhere. Others would speak of an eerie, palpable presence, as though Jackson himself, or perhaps Pole, had never truly left. The bird's notorious outbursts at the funeral became not just a piece of history, but a living legend, shrouded in mystery and infused with the kind of eerie wonder that only time could weave. Pole's curses became a metaphor for the political turbulence that defined Jackson's legacy. For many, Jackson's presidency had been a storm, a clash of ideologies, a battle for power, a fight for the soul of the nation. He had been a man of contradictions, brutal yet beloved, a champion of the common people, yet a man of fierce, often destructive convictions. And in Pole, his pet, these contradictions had found their voice. The parrot's curses, though outrageous, were a reflection of the complex, turbulent world that Jackson had left behind. The bird's final outburst at the funeral, its relentless and chaotic tirade, served as a reminder of Jackson's indomitable spirit, one that refused to be silenced even in death. As time went on, the memory of Pole and its curses became more than just an oddity. It was a reflection of Jackson's enduring influence, a symbol of the power of his legacy, for better or worse. Over the years, Jackson's death and the subsequent fame of Pole the parrot became a captivating tale for historians and storytellers alike. The bizarre nature of the bird's last moments, swearing at a funeral with no regard for the somber occasion, was a fitting metaphor for the complexities of Jackson's life. The more the story was told, the more it seemed to grow, like an ancient myth passed down through generations. Historians debated whether Pole's outbursts were simply a reflection of Jackson's notorious temperament, or whether they were an eerie manifestation of something darker, perhaps the unfinished business of a president who had never fully reconciled with the nation. No one could quite explain why the bird had chosen such an unholy time to unleash its fury, but one thing remained clear: Jackson's influence, and Pole's cursed voice, would echo through the annals of history for years to come. In the end, the story of Pole and Jackson became one of those strange, almost mystical chapters of history that defy explanation. For those who had been there, for those who had heard the parrot's furious tirade at the funeral, it was an experience they would never forget. And for those who came later, the tale of the swearing parrot would live on in legend, a story that seemed almost too absurd to be true. Yet the truth of it lingered, like the echoes of Pole's final outburst. Jackson's legacy, with all its fire and fury, had somehow passed on to a bird, and that bird had screamed his anger for all to hear, even in death. The tale of Pole and the funeral became a part of American folklore, a story of passion, power, and the unrelenting force of a spirit that could never be silenced, no matter how hard the world tried to forget.